The observation room had windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the darkness of space beyond. Commander Xyloth stood in the center of the room, his four eyes scanning the faces of the council members who sat in a half-circle around him. His crystalline skin caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the polished floor. 3 years, that was how long the Galactic Coalition had been watching Earth. 3 years since the humans had figured out faster-than-light travel and stumbled into Coalition space like children wandering into a library. The Council had been patient, waiting to see what these newcomers would do. Now it was time to decide their fate. Xyloth touched a control panel on his wrist and a holographic display flickered to life above the council table. Images of Earth appeared, spinning slowly in the air. Cities covered in lights, vehicles moving through streets, humans walking and talking and living their lives. Honored council members, Xyloth began, his voice carrying the clicking undertone of his native language. I have completed my evaluation of the human species. My recommendation is clear. They should be classified as Class 3 civilization, barely worthy of limited trade agreements. A murmur rippled through the council. Class 3 was low, very low. It meant restricted access to Coalition technology, monitored communications, and strict limits on where human ships could travel. It was the classification given to species who were not quite ready to join the wider galaxy. Dr. Venna, the Krell representative, leaned forward. Her tentacles glowed with soft blue light, a sign of curiosity. That seems harsh, Commander. The humans developed FTL travel on their own. That shows significant capability. They stumbled onto FTL travel, Xyloth corrected. Their method is crude and dangerous, but that is not my primary concern. He changed the holographic display, showing scenes of human warfare. Tanks rolling across fields, aircraft screaming through skies, soldiers running through smoke and fire. Look at their history. They are violent, aggressive, and unstable. They have fought wars on every continent of their planet. Many species have violent pasts, said Thorax Prime, the Thoraxian delegate. His massive form shifted in his specially built chair. We ourselves had a warrior culture before joining the Coalition. True, Xyloth agreed. But there is another factor. The humans are completely dependent on their technology. Remove their machines and they become helpless. They cannot survive without constant technological support. This makes them weak, unreliable partners for the Coalition. The council chamber fell quiet. This was a serious accusation. The Coalition valued self-reliance above almost everything else. Species who could not adapt, who relied too heavily on machines, were seen as fragile and temporary. You have proof of this claim? Asked Venna. I propose a simple test, Xyloth said. We have several humans currently in our cultural exchange program. We select one, strip them of all technology, and place them in a controlled environment. We observe how long they survive. I predict they will fail within hours, perhaps sooner. The council members looked at each other. It was an elegant solution, simple, clear, and definitive. If the human could adapt and survive, it would prove their worth. If they failed, it would confirm Xyloth's assessment. The test will not harm the human? Venna asked. Our agreement with Earth requires we treat their people with respect. The environment will be monitored at all times, Xyloth assured her. At the first sign of real danger, we extract them. This is purely an observation exercise. We simply want to see how they respond to the removal of their technology. Thorax Prime nodded his large head. I support this test. It seems fair and scientific. If the humans are truly worthy of higher classification, they will prove it. If not, we will know. One by one, the council members agreed. The vote was unanimous. Xyloth felt a surge of satisfaction. He knew the humans would fail, and when they did, his careful analysis would be proven correct. Earth would receive its Class 3 classification, and the Coalition would be protected from bringing in a weak, dependent species. Which human do we select? Asked Venna. Xyloth pulled up another display showing a list of names and faces. I have reviewed all 12 humans currently on Varath Station. Most have specialized training that might give them an unfair advantage, but one stands out as perfectly average. A human face appeared in the hologram, young, with brown hair and a friendly expression. The file scrolled past, showing details of his life. Jake Miller, age 32, from a place called Chicago on Earth. His profession was listed as environmental systems engineer. No military service, no survival training, no unusual skills. He works on spacecraft life support systems, Xyloth explained. He volunteered for the exchange program to learn about coalition technology. His psychological profile shows he is curious but not aggressive, intelligent but not exceptional. He is, by all measures, a completely average human specimen. Perfect, said Thorax Prime. When do we begin? Tomorrow, Xyloth said. I will prepare the environment tonight. A simple forest setting, temperate climate with adequate food and water sources nearby. Nothing that should present real danger. We will simply observe how long it takes before he requests rescue. The council adjourned and Xyloth returned to his laboratory. He spent the evening programming the simulation chamber, creating a perfect replica of an Earth forest. The trees were based on scans from the planet's northern regions, tall pines and oaks with thick undergrowth. He added a small stream for water and populated the area with small animals for food, if the human could figure out how to catch them, which Xyloth doubted. As he worked, Xyloth thought about the humans. They were so strange compared to other species. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They were not particularly strong or fast. Their senses were average at best. Yet somehow they had survived on their planet and even reached the stars. It must be the technology, Xyloth concluded. Humans had learned to build tools early in their development, and they had become addicted to them. Strip away the machines and you would find a creature barely capable of surviving on its own. Tomorrow's test would prove this. The next morning, Jake Miller was summoned to Xyloth's office. The young human arrived on time, looking curious and slightly nervous. He wore the standard gray jumpsuit that all exchange program participants received. Mr. Miller, Xyloth greeted him. Thank you for coming. I have an unusual request for you. Jake smiled. Sure, Commander. What can I do for you? The Council is conducting research on survival capabilities across different species, Xyloth explained, keeping his voice casual. We would like you to participate in a simple observation exercise. You would spend some time in a simulated Earth environment without access to modern technology. We want to see how different species adapt to such conditions. Jake looked interested. Like a camping trip? Something like that, Xyloth said. You will be completely safe. We will monitor you at all times. If you want to stop the exercise at any point, you simply say so, and we extract you immediately. It should only last a few hours. Sounds fun, actually, Jake said. I used to go camping with my grandfather when I was a kid. Haven't done anything like that in years. Xyloth noted this with interest. Camping, a recreational activity involving temporary removal from civilization. Interesting that humans did this voluntarily, though it was probably with extensive preparation and equipment. That would not help Jake now. Excellent, Xyloth said. We begin in 1 hour. Report to Simulation Chamber 7. You will be provided with simple clothing, nothing else. Remember, if you need anything or want to stop, just ask. The observation team will hear you. Jake nodded and left, looking excited rather than worried. Xyloth watched him go and felt certain of his conclusion. The human had no idea what he was about to face. Without his technology, his tools, his comfortable modern life, Jake Miller would quickly realize how helpless he really was. The test would begin soon, and Xyloth's thesis would be proven correct. Humans were weak, dependent, and unsuited for true partnership with the Coalition. By evening, everyone would see the truth. Xyloth could not have been more wrong. Jake opened his eyes to find himself lying on soft grass. The last thing he remembered was stepping into the simulation chamber and putting on a neural interface helmet. Now he was somewhere else entirely, somewhere that looked and felt completely real. He sat up slowly and looked around. Trees surrounded him, tall pines and oaks with leaves that rustled in a gentle breeze. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating patches of light and shadow on the forest floor. A bird called somewhere nearby, and Jake could hear the distant sound of running water. His standard jumpsuit was gone, replaced with simple cloth pants and a loose shirt. No shoes, no watch, no communication device, nothing except the clothes on his back. Jake stood up and brushed dirt from his hands. The simulation was impressive. If Jake did not know better, he would think this was real. The grass felt genuine under his bare feet. The air smelled of pine needles and earth, and the temperature was comfortable but cooling. He looked up at the sky and saw an artificial sun beginning to move toward the horizon. Evening was coming. High above, in the observation deck, Commander Xyloth stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The room was filled with scientists from various species, all gathered to watch the test. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing Jake from multiple angles. "Subject is conscious and alert," reported a Vindari technician, her scales clicking as she worked the controls. "All vital signs normal. Temperature is set to drop slowly over the next 2 hours to simulate nightfall." "Good," Xyloth said. "Let us see how long it takes before he realizes his situation is hopeless." Dr. Venna moved closer to one of the displays, her tentacles glowing with interest. "He seems calm, not panicking." "He does not understand yet," Xyloth replied. "Wait until he tries to build a fire or find food. Humans require cooked meat, and without tools to create fire or weapons to hunt, he will quickly become desperate." In the forest below, Jake was doing exactly what Xyloth predicted, but not in the way the commander expected. Jake started walking, his eyes scanning the ground as he moved. "He was looking for something specific. What is he doing?" asked Thorax Prime, leaning forward in his seat. "Searching," Venna observed. "But for what?" Jake moved through the forest with purpose. He gathered dry grass and placed it in a pile. Then he collected small twigs and dead branches, sorting them by size. He found a flat piece of bark and set it aside. The observers watched with growing curiosity as Jake built several small piles of materials, each one organized and deliberate. "Perhaps he is trying to build a shelter," suggested Xyloth. "Crude, but it shows some intelligence at least." But Jake was not building a shelter. He was still searching for something, picking up rocks and examining them closely. He would look at a stone for a moment, then either toss it aside or set it carefully in a growing collection. The pile of rocks grew slowly as Jake worked his way through the forest. "What use are rocks?" Thorax Prime rumbled. "They are just stones." "I do not know," Venna admitted. Her tentacles flickered with uncertainty. Jake picked up another rock and his face changed. A small smile crossed his features. He held the stone up to catch the light, turning it over in his hands. This one was different from the others, made of flint with sharp edges where it had broken naturally. Jake added it to his collection and kept searching. Minutes passed. Jake found another rock, this one harder and heavier. He struck it against the flint and nodded with satisfaction at the sound it made. Then he returned to his pile of materials and sat down cross-legged on the ground. "Is he giving up already?" Xyloth asked, surprised. "Sitting down to wait for rescue?" "No," Venna said slowly. "Look at his posture. He is concentrating on something. His hands are moving." Jake held the piece of flint steady against his thigh. With his other hand, he raised the harder stone and brought it down at a precise angle. The impact was controlled, measured. A sharp flake of flint split away and fell to the ground. In the observation deck, every being went still. They watched as Jake struck the stone again. Another flake fell away. The human's movements were confident, practiced. He was not guessing or experimenting. He knew exactly what he was doing. "What is this?" Thorax Prime demanded. "What is he making?" "I believe," Venna said quietly, "he is creating a tool." "From a rock?" Xyloth's voice carried disbelief. "That is impossible. Tool creation requires precision equipment, manufacturing facilities, molecular assembly." "Not for humans, apparently," Venna replied. Jake continued his work. Each strike removed exactly the material he needed. The rough piece of flint was transforming, taking shape under his hands. A blade was emerging from the stone, crude but functional. Jake rotated the flint, working from different angles, his fingers testing the edge after every few strikes. The observers watched in growing amazement. The Vindari technician pulled up a timer on her display. "Commander, we should note the time." This seemed significant. "Yes," Xyloth said absently, unable to look away from the display. "Mark it." Jake's hands moved with steady rhythm. Strike, rotate, test the edge. Strike, rotate, test the edge. The blade grew sharper, more refined. He took some of the dry grass he had collected and wrapped it around one end of the stone, creating a simple handle. Then he made a few final adjustments, knocking small flakes from the cutting edge. Finally, Jake stood up. He held the stone knife in his hand, testing its weight and balance. Then he walked to a young sapling and cut into it with a single smooth motion. The blade sliced clean through the thin trunk. Jake smiled and nodded to himself. The knife was good. It would work for what he needed. He began cutting more saplings, trimming branches, creating a pile of straight wooden poles. In the observation deck, chaos erupted. Multiple scientists were talking at once, checking displays, running calculations. The Vindari technician's voice cut through the noise. "Commander, the timer shows 90 seconds, and what?" Xyloth spun to face her. from the first strike to the completed tool. 90 seconds. That is all the time it took him. Xyloth's crystalline skin flickered with colors that indicated shock and confusion. That cannot be right. Check your instruments. All systems are functioning correctly, Commander, the technician replied. 90 seconds. I have the recording if you want to verify. Play it, demanded Thorax Prime. The recording appeared on the main display. They watched Jake's hands move, counted each strike of the stone. 30 seconds to rough out the shape, 60 seconds to refine the blade, 85 seconds to wrap the handle, 90 seconds to make final adjustments. Then he stood, tested it, and cut through the sapling. The room fell silent. Every scientist was processing what they had just witnessed. Jake Miller, an average human with no special training listed in his file, had created a functional cutting tool from raw stone in less time than it took most species to scan and identify materials with their advanced equipment. This must be an error, Xyloth insisted. Check his file again. He must have specialist training. Perhaps military combat engineering or primitive survival skills or something. Venna pulled up Jake's complete history on her display. She read through it carefully, then read it again. Finally, she looked up at Xyloth. Nothing, Commander. He is exactly what we thought. A civilian engineer from an urban area. No military service, no wilderness training programs. His education is all technical, focused on spacecraft systems. Then how? Xyloth gestured at the display where Jake was now using his knife to strip bark from the saplings he had cut. How does he know how to do this? I think, Venna said slowly, we may need to reconsider our assessment of humans. This ability suggests something we did not account for in our analysis. Below, Jake was building his shelter now, using the poles he had cut. He worked steadily and calmly, weaving branches together, piling leaves for insulation. The knife remained at his side, a simple tool made from stone and grass. 90 seconds of work that had just changed everything the Coalition thought they knew about humanity. Commander Xyloth paced back and forth across the observation deck. His crystalline skin kept changing colors, flickering between confused blue and alarmed orange. Other scientists stood at their stations equally disturbed by what they were watching. On the main display, Jake Miller continued his work. His shelter was taking shape, a simple lean-to structure built against a fallen log. He had stripped bark from several trees and was now weaving it between the poles to create walls. His movements were efficient and purposeful. How much time has passed? Xyloth demanded. 1 hour and 12 minutes since insertion, the Vindari technician replied. The subject has completed a cutting tool, begun construction of shelter, and is now working on weatherproofing. Dr. Venna moved closer to the display, showing Jake's hands as he worked. Remarkable. He is not hesitating or making errors. Every action seems practiced, automatic. It makes no sense, Xyloth muttered. His file shows no relevant experience. He should be helpless without technology. Commander, called another technician from across the room. I think you should see this. Xyloth walked over to the workstation. The technician had pulled up additional footage showing Jake from a different angle. Watch what he does now. On the screen, Jake finished securing the last piece of bark to his shelter. Then he gathered the pile of dry grass and small twigs he had collected earlier. He arranged them carefully in a small cleared area near his shelter, building a structure that looked like a tiny cone. What is that? Thorax Prime asked, joining them. I believe he is preparing to make fire, Venna said softly. Impossible, Xyloth snapped. Fire requires ignition technology. Plasma torches, energy beams, chemical reactions. He has none of those things. But Jake was not looking for plasma torches. He was searching the ground again, picking through fallen branches until he found what he wanted. A straight dead stick about as long as his arm. He tested it for hardness, then nodded. Jake found another piece of wood, this one flat and dry. He used his stone knife to carve a small depression in the flat piece, then created a notch leading away from it. The scientists watched, confused about his purpose. Then Jake placed the flat piece of wood on the ground and put his foot on it to hold it steady. He positioned the stick vertically in the depression and began to spin it rapidly between his palms, pressing down as he worked. What is he doing? Someone asked. Creating friction, Venna breathed. He is generating heat through mechanical action. The room fell silent as they watched. Jake's hands moved steadily up and down the stick, spinning it continuously. Smoke began to rise from the depression where the stick met the flat piece of wood. Jake did not slow down or stop. His face showed concentration but not strain. This was something he knew how to do. Dark powder accumulated in the notch Jake had carved, the product of the friction. The powder began to glow, a tiny ember forming. Jake carefully transferred it to his nest of dry grass and began to blow on it gently. The grass caught, a small flame appearing, then growing. Jake fed the flame with small twigs, building it up gradually until he had a proper fire burning. Then he added larger pieces of wood and sat back, warming his hands over the flames. The artificial sun was setting now, and the temperature in the simulation had dropped. The fire provided heat and light. In the observation deck, nobody spoke. They stared at the human sitting calmly by his fire, inside his shelter, with his handmade knife resting beside him. Less than 2 hours had passed since the test began. "Commander," the Vindari technician said quietly, "what are your orders?" "Should we continue the test?" Xyloth could not answer. His entire thesis was crumbling before his eyes. He had predicted Jake would fail within hours, would call for rescue as soon as he realized he was alone and helpless. Instead, the human had created tools, built shelter, and made fire. He had done in 2 hours what should have been impossible without advanced technology. "Continue the test," Xyloth finally said. "Perhaps this is just luck. Or perhaps his camping experience gave him more knowledge than we realized. We need to see what happens next." "As you wish, Commander," the technician replied, though her tone suggested she thought the test had already proven something important. Jake was not done. As night fell in the simulation, he used his fire to create a torch, wrapping bark and grass around a stick and lighting it. Then he walked to the stream they had included in the environment. The observers watched as he examined the water, looking at the flow and the rocks beneath the surface. "What is he looking for now?" Thorax Prime asked. "Food, perhaps," Venna suggested. "We included fish in the stream, but he has no fishing equipment." Jake returned to his fire and selected a long, straight sapling he had cut earlier. Using his stone knife, he began to sharpen one end, carving it to a fine point. Then he hardened the point in the fire, rotating it slowly until the wood darkened and strengthened. A spear. The human had made a spear. Jake tested the balance of the spear, made a few adjustments to the grip, then returned to the stream. He stood very still on the bank, the torch planted in the ground nearby providing light. The spear was held ready in his hands. Minutes passed. Jake did not move, his eyes fixed on the water. Then in one smooth motion he struck. The spear flashed into the stream and came up with a fish wriggling on the end. Jake smiled and carried his catch back to the fire. He cleaned the fish with his stone knife, then cooked it on a flat rock he had placed in the flames. Soon the smell of cooking fish filled the air. Jake ate his meal calmly, seemingly content with his situation. The observation deck was in chaos again. Scientists were pulling up Earth databases, searching for information about human history and development. What they found was shocking. "Commander," Venna called out, "you need to see this. I have been researching human technological development." Xyloth joined her at the console. The display showed pages from Earth's historical records, things the Coalition had skimmed over during their initial assessment. "Look at this timeline," Venna said. "Humans used stone tools for 2 million years. 2 million years, Commander. They perfected the techniques Jake just demonstrated, generation after generation learning and refining, creating cutting tools, making fire, hunting with spears. It was not just their technology. It was their survival method for most of their existence as a species." Xyloth stared at the data. 2 million years. The Verith had been a spacefaring civilization for 50,000 years and thought that was impressive. But humans had been making stone knives for 2 million years before they ever reached space. "They call it the Stone Age," Venna continued. "They name entire periods of their development by the materials they worked with. Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. Each one building on the last. They did not forget the old ways when they learned new ones. They just added the new knowledge to what they already had." "But Jake is an engineer," Xyloth protested weakly. "He works with spacecraft systems. Why does he know how to make Stone Age tools?" "Because humans teach it," Venna said simply. "Look here. It is part of their education. They make their children learn about their history, not just read about it, but practice it. They consider it important to remember where they came from." On the display, Jake had finished his meal and was adding more wood to his fire. He arranged it carefully to burn slowly through the night, keeping him warm. Then he settled into his shelter, the stone knife within easy reach, and closed his eyes, Less than 3 hours since the test began, Jake Miller had food, water, fire, shelter, and weapons. He had not called for rescue. He had not panicked. He had simply adapted and survived using skills his species had perfected over millions of years. Xyloth looked at the peaceful scene on the display and felt the weight of his mistake. He had thought removing technology would make humans helpless. He had not realized that for humans, technology was just the newest tool in a kit they had been building since before they were truly human. Take away the machines and you did not get helpless primitives. You got survivors who had spent 2 million years learning to turn rocks into knives and sticks into spears. Commander, Thorax Prime said quietly, I think we need to discuss reclassifying humanity. Xyloth could only nod. The test was over, but not in the way he had planned. Jake Miller had proven something the Coalition had not expected. Humanity did not need saving from the wilderness. The wilderness needed saving from humanity. The emergency council session was called for the next morning. Word of Jake's performance had spread through Vareth Station overnight, and the council chamber was packed with representatives from all 12 Coalition species. Everyone wanted to see the footage and hear the explanations. Commander Xyloth stood at the front of the room, his crystalline skin a dull gray color that indicated shame and uncertainty. Beside him, Dr. Venna operated the holographic displays, showing selected footage from the test. As you can see, Xyloth began, his voice quiet, the test did not produce the results I predicted. The human subject not only survived, but thrived in the environment. He demonstrated capabilities we did not expect. The footage played showing Jake creating the knife. The council members watched in silence as the 90 seconds ticked by, showing the transformation from raw stone to functional tool. Then they saw the fire making, the shelter construction, the spear fishing, all of it accomplished with nothing but the materials found in nature and the knowledge carried in Jake's mind. This is incredible, breathed Senator Crix, the Vindari representative. Her scales clicked with agitation. We have never seen anything like this. To create complex tools with no equipment, no preparation time. It is not that unusual, came a voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Ambassador Amy Walsh standing near the entrance. She was a middle-aged human woman with gray-streaked hair and a calm demeanor. May I speak, honored council members? Please, Ambassador. Thorax Prime gestured for her to come forward. We were about to summon you anyway. We need to understand what we witnessed. Amy walked to the center of the chamber, glancing at the frozen image of Jake holding his stone knife. She smiled slightly. Jake did well. His grandfather would be proud. You know this individual? Xyloth asked. I have met him a few times at exchange program meetings, Amy replied. Nice young man. Good engineer. But I was referring to his skills. Any human with basic education could do what he did. The chamber erupted with noise. Multiple council members were talking at once, expressing disbelief. Amy waited patiently for them to quiet down. Ambassador, Senator Crix said carefully, are you claiming that any random human could create tools from stone, make fire without equipment, and hunt with primitive weapons? Most could, yes, Amy confirmed. We teach these skills in school. History classes include practical demonstrations. Children learn to nap flint, to start fires with friction, to identify edible plants. It is considered basic knowledge about our own development as a species, but why? Venna asked, genuinely curious. You have advanced technology. Why teach ancient survival methods? Amy considered the question. Because forgetting where you came from is dangerous. We spent millions of years developing these skills. They are part of what made us human. Technology is wonderful, but it can fail. Equipment can break. Ships can crash. If you depend entirely on machines and those machines stop working, you die. Humans prefer to have backup plans. Backup plans, Thorax Prime repeated. You mean redundancy in critical systems? Exactly, Amy said. Our brains are backup systems for technology. We can calculate without computers, navigate without GPS, and survive without life support systems. Not as well as with those tools, obviously, but we can do it. That redundancy has saved countless lives over the years. Xyloth spoke up, his voice troubled. Ambassador, I must bring up a concern. Human history is filled with warfare and violence. You evolved as hunters, as predators. Seeing Jake create weapons so easily, so naturally, is alarming. It suggests humans are inherently dangerous. Amy did not flinch from the accusation. Yes, we are dangerous. I will not lie about that. We are very good at violence when we choose to be, but you are missing important context. She walked to the holographic display and gestured at the image of Jake. You see a man who made a knife and a spear, weapons, tools of violence, but look at what he did with them. He cut wood to build shelter. He caught a fish to eat. He used the most efficient methods available to meet his basic needs. Violence was not his goal. Survival was. That is a fine distinction, Senator Cricks observed. It is an important one, Amy countered. Yes, humans can be violent. We evolved traits that made us effective hunters and fighters. Endurance, intelligence, the ability to work together, and the willingness to use tools as weapons. But we also evolved traits that made us cooperate, that made us build civilizations. We domesticated plants and animals. We created art, music, literature. We built cities and governments and eventually spaceships. Violence is part of our history, but so is cooperation. Venna spoke up. I have been studying human history since last night. Your species fought wars constantly. Even now your planet has occasional conflicts. True, Amy admitted. We are not perfect. We still have disagreements, sometimes serious ones. But consider this. Earth has 7 billion humans. The vast majority of them will live their entire lives without committing violence against another person. Most humans want peace, want prosperity, want to raise families and build better futures. The ones who choose violence are the exception, not the rule. And yet your capability for violence remains, Xyloth pressed. Jake created a weapon in 90 seconds. Imagine a human army with those skills, with that speed of adaptation. Imagine a human research team with those skills, Amy replied. Imagine human engineers who can improvise solutions to problems using whatever materials are available. Imagine human explorers who can survive anywhere, adapt to anything. The capacity for violence also means capacity for survival, for innovation, for solving impossible problems. You can fear it or you can appreciate it. Preferably both. The chamber fell quiet as the council members absorbed this. Finally, Thorax Prime spoke. Ambassador Walsh, you present a compelling argument. But you must understand our concern. The coalition has existed for thousands of years by carefully managing the introduction of new species. We have protocols, safeguards. Species who are too dependent on technology, too volatile, or too aggressive are restricted until they mature. You are asking us to accept that humans are highly capable survivors with significant capacity for both cooperation and violence. That is a difficult thing to accept without reservation. Amy nodded. I understand. And I am not asking you to trust us blindly. I'm asking you to judge us fairly. Yes, we are dangerous. But dangerous does not mean evil. A knife is dangerous, but it can be used to cut bread or carve wood, not just to harm. Humans are the same. We have potential for both creation and destruction. What we choose to do with that potential is what matters. And what do humans choose? Senator Cricks asked. We choose to reach for the stars, Amy said simply. Despite our flaws, despite our violent history, humans looked up at the night sky and decided we belonged there. We built rockets that exploded. We lost crews. We failed again and again. But we kept trying because giving up is not in our nature. We did not wait until we were perfect or peaceful. We launched ourselves into space with computers that had less power than a modern toy. And we succeeded. She looked around at the assembled council members. You have been testing us to see if we are worthy of joining the coalition. But here is what you should really know about humans. We do not give up. We do not surrender when things get difficult. You can strip away our technology, our tools, our comforts, and we will survive. We will adapt. We will find a way forward because that is what humans do. We are dangerous, yes, but we are also determined, innovative, and when we commit to something, we see it through. That is precisely what concerns us, Xyloth said quietly. That determination could be directed toward conquest. It could be, Amy agreed. Or it could be directed toward exploration, discovery, cooperation. You have a choice, honored council. You can restrict us, treat us as potential threats, and guarantee that we remain suspicious and isolated. Or you can welcome us as partners, work with us, and benefit from what we can contribute. Either way, humans are going to the stars. The only question is whether we go as your friends or as strangers. The chamber was silent. Every council member was thinking about the implications of Amy's words. Finally, Thorax Prime stood. The council will adjourn to discuss this matter, he announced. Ambassador Walsh, thank you for your honesty. We will contact you with our decision. Amy bowed slightly and left the chamber. As she walked through the corridors of Varath Station, She allowed herself a small smile. Jake had done more than pass a survival test. He had shown the coalition that humans were not weak, not helpless, and definitely not simple. Now it was up to the council to decide what to do with that information. Behind her, in the council chamber, the real debate was just beginning. The council deliberations lasted 3 days. During that time, Jake Miller remained in the simulation, unaware of the political storm happening above him. The observation team continued to monitor him, documenting everything he did. On the second day, Jake improved his shelter by weaving a waterproof roof from strips of bark. He created a second knife, this one with a finer edge for detailed work. He caught more fish, smoked some of them over his fire to preserve them for later. He even made simple cordage by twisting plant fibers together, using it to create better lashings for his shelter and tools. Dr. Venna watched all of it with growing fascination. She had taken charge of the observation team after Xyloth withdrew to prepare his reports for the council. Where Xyloth had seen threat and danger, Venna saw opportunity and potential. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, pointing at the display showing Jake's latest project. "He is not just surviving. He is thriving, improving his situation continuously. Every tool leads to a better tool. Every technique opens up new possibilities. This is not luck or simple memory. This is systematic problem solving." Her assistant, a young Vindari named Sela, agreed. "It is remarkable. Most species, if you strip them of technology, regress immediately. They become helpless, dependent on rescue. But humans apparently just shift to older technology. They do not panic. They adapt, because for them technology is not a crutch," Venna mused. "It is an amplifier. Remove the amplifier and they still have their base capabilities. Those capabilities are just less efficient, not absent." She pulled up comparative data on her console. "Look at this. I analyzed how long it would take various coalition species to accomplish what Jake has done. The Thoraxians would need their portable fabricators. The Vindari would require molecular scanners and assembly equipment. Even my own people would need at minimum our biomanipulation tools. But Jake needed nothing except knowledge and time. Is that better or worse?" Sela asked. "From the coalition's perspective? That depends on what we value," Venna replied. "If we value technological advancement above all else, then humans are concerning because they maintain ties to primitive methods. But if we value adaptability, resilience, and self-sufficiency, then humans are exactly the kind of partners we should want." On the third day of deliberations, the council finally reached a decision. They summoned Commander Xyloth, Ambassador Walsh, and several key scientists, including Dr. Venna. The council chamber was more somber than before, the weight of the decision evident on every face. Thorax Prime stood to address the assembled group. "We have reviewed all the evidence, discussed the implications, and consulted with specialists across multiple disciplines. The question before us was whether humanity should be classified as Class 3, restricting their access to coalition space and technology. This decision required us to examine what we truly value in potential partner species." He paused, letting the tension build. Amy stood calmly, her expression neutral. Xyloth's crystalline skin showed swirls of nervous colors. "The council has decided," Thorax Prime continued, "to reclassify humanity. However, not in the way originally proposed." A murmur ran through the room. Amy remained still, waiting. "Humanity is hereby classified as Class 1 civilization," Thorax Prime announced, "with full coalition partnership status and all associated rights and responsibilities." The room erupted. Class 1 was the highest classification, reserved for the most advanced and trusted species. It granted unrestricted travel, full technology sharing, and voting rights on coalition matters. Only 6 of the 12 founding species had achieved Class 1 status. For Earth to jump directly there from pending classification was unprecedented. Thorax Prime raised a massive hand for silence. "Let me explain our reasoning. The test we conducted was meant to evaluate human capability without technology. What it actually revealed was something far more significant. Humans do not become helpless without technology. They simply use different technology, older technology. They maintain proficiency in methods that other species abandoned millions of years ago." Senator Crix took over. "We asked ourselves what makes a strong partner in the coalition. The answer is not just advanced technology. Many species have that. It is adaptability, resilience, and the ability to solve problems under adverse conditions. Jake Miller demonstrated all of these traits. More importantly, Ambassador Walsh confirmed that his capabilities are not exceptional among humans. They are normal, expected, taught to children. This means, Thorax Prime added, that humans are perhaps the most redundantly capable species we have encountered. They can operate at multiple technological levels simultaneously. This makes them incredibly valuable in exploration, emergency situations, and long-term projects where equipment might fail or conditions might change unexpectedly. Xyloth spoke up, his voice humble. Honored council members, I must ask, what about the concerns regarding human aggression and capacity for violence? Addressed and accepted, Thorax Prime replied. Yes, humans have violent capability, but so do the Thoraxians, the Krell, and half the species in this coalition. What matters is whether that capability is controlled, directed constructively. Human history shows a species learning to manage their aggressive instincts. Their current global peace, though imperfect, demonstrates significant progress. More importantly, their tendency toward violence appears to be matched by an equally strong tendency toward cooperation and problem-solving. We believe the benefits outweigh the risks. Amy finally allowed herself to smile. Thank you, honored council. Earth accepts this classification gratefully. We look forward to full partnership with the coalition. There are conditions, Senator Crick said. As with all Class 1 species, humans will be expected to contribute to coalition defense, research, and exploration efforts. You will need to establish embassies on coalition worlds and accept coalition observers on Earth. You will participate in joint ventures and share your technological developments. Earth agrees to all standard conditions, Amy confirmed. We are ready to be true partners. Excellent, Thorax Prime said. Now regarding Mr. Miller, should we extract him from the simulation? Amy laughed. Probably yes. He volunteered for a few hours and it has been 3 days. He might be wondering why we have not stopped the test yet. Actually, Dr. Venna interjected, I checked with him this morning. He asked if he could stay longer. Apparently he is enjoying himself. This brought surprised reactions from everyone. Enjoying himself, Xyloth repeated. In primitive conditions with no comforts, barely any food?
He called it relaxing, Venna said with amusement.
Said it reminded him of camping trips with his grandfather. He asked if we could extend the simulation for another week. Amy shook her head with a smile. That sounds like a human. Give us a challenge and we start to enjoy it. But no, we should probably bring him back. We need to inform him that he accidentally became the most important human in the galaxy for a few days. Agreed, Thorax Prime said. Dr. Venna, please extract Mr. Miller and inform him that his participation has concluded. Commander Xyloth, you will prepare the formal announcement of humanity's reclassification. Ambassador Walsh, Earth's diplomatic corps, should be informed immediately to begin preparations for full partnership integration. As the meeting adjourned, Xyloth approached Amy privately. His crystalline skin showed colors of apology and respect. Ambassador, I owe you an apology. I underestimated your species badly. I let my assumptions blind me to the truth. Amy extended her hand. We all make mistakes, Commander. The important thing is learning from them. You did learn, right? Xyloth reached out and carefully shook her hand, copying the human gesture. I learned that humans are dangerous, not because they are violent or aggressive, but because they never give up. They adapt. They survive. They find ways forward even when logic says there is no path. That makes them either the best allies or the worst enemies. I am glad we chose allies. So am I, Amy said warmly. So am I. In the simulation chamber, Jake Miller was building a better fishing spear, unaware that he had just changed the course of human history. He worked calmly, methodically, his hands shaping the wood with practiced ease. When Dr. Venna's voice came through the speakers to tell him the test was over, he actually looked disappointed. Already? He asked. I was just starting to get comfortable. Dr. Venna, watching from the observation deck, shared a look with her assistant. Comfortable, she repeated. Humans are absolutely terrifying. But she was smiling as she said it. 3 weeks after the test, Jake Miller sat in Ambassador Walsh's office, still somewhat confused about what had happened. The extraction from the simulation had been followed by a medical check, a debriefing with Dr. Venna, and then several days of unexplained attention from various coalition officials. Now Amy was finally explaining why. So let me get this straight, Jake said slowly. I made a knife from a rock, and that somehow convinced the entire Galactic Coalition to give humanity full partnership status. Amy smiled. It was a bit more complicated than that, but essentially, yes. Your demonstration proved that humans maintain capabilities that most species have lost. The Coalition values that kind of redundancy and adaptability. Jake shook his head in disbelief. I just did what my grandfather taught me. He was really into primitive camping and survival skills. He used to take me out into the woods for weeks at a time. I thought everyone knew how to do basic stuff like that. Most humans do, at least in theory, Amy agreed. But most alien species do not. That difference is what made your actions so impressive to them. They saw survival skills that their own people lost millions of years ago. Huh, Jake said, processing this. So what happens now? Now you go back to your job as an environmental systems engineer, Amy said, though you will probably get interviewed a lot. The footage of your test has been shared across Coalition space. You are somewhat famous now, Jake groaned. Great. I just wanted to learn about alien life support technology. Well, you will have plenty of access to that now, Amy assured him. Class 1 status means full technology sharing. Earth gets access to Coalition databases, manufacturing techniques, everything. You picked a good time to be an engineer interested in alien tech. After Jake left, Amy stood at her office window, looking out at the stars beyond Verath Station. The view never got old. Humanity had reached space through determination and stubborn refusal to accept impossibility. Now they were being welcomed as full partners by species who had been traveling these stars for thousands of years. Her communicator chimed. It was a message from Earth, from the Secretary General. The news of humanity's reclassification had reached home, and celebrations were already beginning. Earth wanted to send a delegation to Verath Station, establish permanent embassies, begin the full integration process. Amy smiled and began composing her reply. There was so much work ahead, so many details to arrange, but that was fine. Humans were good at work, good at pushing forward despite obstacles, good at finding ways to succeed when success seemed impossible. Elsewhere on the station, Dr. Venna was in her laboratory, reviewing the complete footage from Jake's test for what must have been the 100th time. She had compiled extensive notes, cross-referenced with Earth's historical databases, and begun work on a comprehensive study of human adaptability. Her assistant Sella entered carrying a data pad. Doctor, the comparative analysis you requested is complete. The results are fascinating. Venna took the pad and scanned through the data. They had analyzed how long it would take average members of each coalition species to accomplish basic survival tasks without technology. The results were sobering. Most species would fail completely within hours. The Vindari could not process food without their molecular scanners. The Thoraxians needed environmental suits to maintain body temperature. The Krell required constant access to water and could not create containers to carry it. Even the most adaptable species would struggle for days to accomplish what Jake had done in hours. We have become too dependent, Venna mused. We built such advanced technology that we forgot how to survive without it. Humans never forgot because they never stopped teaching the old ways alongside the new. Is that a problem? Sayla asked. It could be, Venna admitted. What happens if our technology fails catastrophically? What if ships crash on primitive worlds, or stations lose power, or colonies are cut off from supply lines? We would be helpless. But humans would adapt and survive. That makes them incredibly valuable partners for dangerous exploration and colonization efforts. She pulled up another file. I have been reading about human space exploration history. Did you know they sent people to their moon with computers that could barely perform basic calculations? They trusted human pilots to manually land spacecraft on alien surfaces. That level of confidence in biological capability over technological safety is almost unheard of in coalition history. Reckless or brave? Sela wondered. Both, Venna said, and that is why they succeeded. They took risks we would never take. They pushed boundaries we would never push. They reached the stars earlier in their development than any species in coalition records because they were willing to try, even when failure was likely. In his private quarters, Commander Xyloth was preparing his final report on the human assessment. It was a humbling document to write, full of admissions of error and misjudgment, but it was also honest, which was what the coalition needed. He wrote, "Humanity represents a unique case in coalition history. They are a species that has achieved space travel while maintaining proficiency in primitive survival skills. This combination makes them adaptable in ways we did not anticipate. They can operate across multiple technological levels simultaneously, from stone tools to faster-than-light engines. This redundancy provides them with remarkable resilience. Initial concerns about human aggression and capacity for violence remain valid. Humans are dangerous. However, that danger is controlled and directed constructively most of the time. More importantly, their dangerous capabilities are matched by equally strong tendencies toward cooperation, innovation, and problem-solving. They are a species of builders as much as fighters. Recommendation: treat humans as highly capable partners with significant potential for both cooperation and conflict. Maintain respectful relations. Engage them in challenging projects that utilize their adaptability. Never underestimate their ability to find solutions to seemingly impossible problems. And never, under any circumstances, assume they are helpless just because their technology has been removed. They built civilization from rocks and sticks. Imagine what they will build with access to Coalition knowledge and resources. Xyloth finished the report and sent it to the Coalition archives. It would become required reading for any species making first contact with humans in the future. Let them learn from his mistakes. Let them understand what humanity really was before they made assumptions. 6 months later, the first joint human coalition expedition launched from Varath Station. The mission was to explore an uncharted star system on the edge of Coalition space. The crew was mixed, humans working alongside Thraxians, Vindari, Krell, and others. It was a test of the new partnership, a chance to see how well the species could work together. Jake Miller was part of the expedition, serving as one of the environmental systems specialists. He had become something of a celebrity, the human who proved his species' worth with nothing but a rock and 90 seconds. But on the expedition, he was just another crew member, doing his job and learning from his alien colleagues. When the ship encountered an unexpected problem, a cascade failure in the navigation systems that left them temporarily stranded in deep space, it was the human crew members who remained calm. While other species panicked about being cut off from their supporting technology, the humans simply started working on manual solutions. Jake helped jury-rig a backup navigation system using spare parts and a surprising amount of duct tape, which he explained was a traditional human solution to mechanical problems. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans essentially rebuilt critical systems from scratch, using whatever materials were available. "How do you know how to do this?" asked the Vindari engineer working with Jake. Jake shrugged. "You learn to improvise. Technology is great, but it breaks sometimes. You need to be able to fix things or work around them. It is just practical." The expedition returned safely, with stories of human ingenuity and adaptability that spread throughout Coalition space. More joint missions were planned. Humans began serving on Coalition vessels, bringing their unique perspective and capabilities to exploration efforts. Earth began sharing its own technology with the Coalition, much of it impressively robust and redundant. Human engineering philosophy focused on backup systems, manual overrides, and fail-safe designs. These were concepts the Coalition had moved away from as their technology became more advanced and automated. Now they saw the value in maintaining those older safety measures. Years passed. The partnership between humanity and the Coalition deepened and grew stronger. Humans proved themselves valuable in countless ways, from their adaptability in crisis situations to their innovative approaches to problem-solving. They brought fresh perspectives to ancient challenges, and sometimes late at night when young humans on Varath Station gathered to share stories, they would talk about the test, about Jake Miller and his stone knife, about the day humanity proved they belonged among the stars not because of their technology, but because of what they carried within themselves: knowledge, determination, and the absolute refusal to ever be truly helpless. The aliens had tested humans by stripping away their technology. They had expected to find weakness. Instead, they found a species that had spent millions of years learning to survive, learning to adapt,